And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, The John Phillips Show. Broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Weggs at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, I found another clip of London Breed screaming at the homeless advocates.
The Homeless Coalition has held San Francisco hostage for decades. It is time for their reign to end.
Why couldn't we have had this London Breed from the moment she got elected?
Would have saved us some trouble.
They always seem to find Jesus by the time they're termed out and they're private citizens and they have no control over city government.
She's still got another term in her if she can win re-election next year, but that might be tough because she's got the entire board of supervisors stacked against her because apparently this opinion that she is screaming out is the outlier in San Francisco.
Now, I wonder what's going to happen, because if you're one of the activists, you now know if you want to make it on the nightly news, you just have to follow her around and engage in a fight.
And less tolerant of all the bullshit that has destroyed our city.
Just whatever you do, because this is a line you do not cross, don't heckle London Breed when Tony comes to town.
Oh, no, especially when she's feeling the spirit. 800-222-KABC is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It's a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. You watch her each and every weeknight on the Fox 11 News, where she anchors the news. You can follow her on Twitter at Marla Tellez. Marla Tellez, welcome.
Hello, John. Always good to be with you.
Likewise. Great to hear your voice and great to have you on the show.
Hey, I'm just trying to get invited to an Angels game with you. I see you out there with Alex. What does it take, John?
We will definitely get you out there for an Angels game soon, and we'll take you up to see Mark Gubicza, too. Great guy.
Okay, good.
Now, before you came to Los Angeles, you were a news broadcaster up in San Francisco, and you covered the ins and the outs of what goes on up there in city politics. And San Francisco is certainly a city that's known for having a full contact sport over at City Hall. Now it's the Mayor London Breed engaging with the homeless advocates on the streets of San Francisco outside of the courthouse as she's trying to get control to clean up those encampments. I would imagine that this is a battle that she's going to be facing for quite some time.
Well, it's one that she's already been facing and the one that she's trying to get a handle on. And yes, I am from the Bay Area. In fact, I was born in San Francisco. It's been, can you believe it? I've been down here for, it'll be 10 years in January. So I don't frequent San Francisco as much as I used to, of course, but having just been back there, and I think, was it Randy who was up there recently too? Homelessness is an issue just like it is down here as well. And, of course, we're going to latch on to those sound bites from London Breed. But when you played that just now, let me just tell you, the first thing that I thought of sounded so similar to Cecily Meyer-Cruz. I thought that actually that's who that was because I've just been connected to you. And I thought, okay, wait, what happened with Cecily in San Francisco? So there you go.
Well, I think she's dating the man who is head of the Oakland Unified School District. Is that not right, Randy?
That's the guy that Cecily Meyer-Cruz went to the Clipper game with when she was on the 3-day strike.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
So Cecily does have a Bay Area connection, but it's in Oakland.
That's right, across the bay.
Yeah,
well,
you keep track of all this. My eyes have been down here in Southern California.
And the battle at L.A. City Hall today involving our mayor, Karen Bass, is with the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, over the migrants that he has been sending by bus from the state of Texas to Los Angeles. And you spoke with the mayor about this.
Yeah, I was at a separate event where she was yesterday, and I got an opportunity to talk to her one-on-one. Of course, I asked her about the 9th migrant bus that arrived in LA a couple of nights ago. She told me yesterday that she does not appreciate any of the buses. There have been hundreds of migrants who have been dropped off from Texas by Governor Abbott in the last couple of months. Again, this is bus number 9. She says that not once has her office been officially notified by Abbott himself. And so therefore it is nothing but a political act. She says it would be nice to be notified. Now, of course, there has been some sort of notification process because even me, in fact, we were the ones who broke the story on bus number 1, where a source from the county came to me and gave me a heads up a couple of days before and said, hey, there's going to be a bus coming. Can't guarantee what time, but we are hearing from officials in Texas that this is happening. So there is some sort of a notification process, but Mayor Bass is saying, bottom line is we're not hearing from Abbott. This is a political ploy. Shame on him. Of course, the other side of this is her constituents who don't necessarily agree with her will say, well, you know what? We are a sanctuary city. So as such, even though she says that LA does not extend an open invitation, we're not asking for these people to come here. Those who don't agree with the politics say, well, you know what? As a sanctuary city, this is the way it goes.
We have some sound of your interaction with Mayor Bass. Let's go ahead and listen.
The 9th one, is there a limit to the hospitality?
Well, it's not a question of hospitality. It's a question of if people arrive in your city, what are you going to do? You're going to take care of them. Los Angeles has not extended an invitation asking for people to come. This is a political act. If it was not a political act, then the governor would try to do this in coordination with the city. And that is not happening. That has never happened.
You also asked the mayor how many people we're willing to take. Let's listen to that.
No, that's the clip we just played.
Oh. Well, there you go. You already heard it.
Yeah. I mean, the other clip was basically her saying, that was my follow-up that you played, was simply saying what I said off the top was, we don't appreciate any of these buses. There's been no notification process. And so absolutely, can you expect a 10th bus? Absolutely. When is that going to happen? Who knows? The other element that she said, and that's the other piece of sound, is the idea that this was more despicable than the previous 8 buses because it happened while Tropical Storm Hillary was sweeping through our area. She says to send vulnerable individuals in a time like this sinks to a new level. She called it, quote, vicious. Of course, there's nothing from Abbott specifically about the buses, but then in sort of a ironic twist of fate, if you will, from Mother Nature, yesterday, Tropical Storm Harold is now sweeping through Texas. And so he is operating his state under a state of emergency because of his own tropical storm. And that was another point she made. She said, of all people, Texas deals with this more than we do in California. Shame on you, sort of a thing.
We've seen similar situations happen in New York City where buses of migrants have been sent from border states to the Big Apple. And we've seen over time a political evolution of the mayor in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams, who used to be a police officer, a beat cop, before he became a politician. And that has put him at odds not only with the Biden administration, but with other Democrats in New York State. He says, I'm the one that's responsible for keeping our budget in line, and this is blowing our budget, so we need control of the border. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Have you seen any sense of any kind of similar political evolution of Karen Bass, or is she digging in her heels?
I think she's digging in her heels. I mean, outright, plain and simple. She says, when people show up in my city, I will take care of them. There are avenues in place. There's a coalition of nonprofits that handles the reception of these migrants when they come in. I mean, now it's just a process now. I mean, you get the notification, the bus arrives at Union Station, they're then bused to at Chinatown. There's St. Anthony's Croatian parish center where they are, given food and shelter and taken care of. And the other element to this is the majority of them do have sponsors in California. They have loved ones. They have family members who they are. That's why they're coming here, is to get reunited with their loved ones locally. So there is a process that is set up in place. I think that Mayor Bass, although she was more irritated and frustrated, I would say the tone was yesterday, and a little bit more defiant, and to say something like, I've never appreciated these buses. There is no extended invitation from Los Angeles to have people come here. I still think that she will take care of them every time they arrive. And so the process goes. I mean, unless we get to, can you imagine if we're going to bus 50? At some point you start to lose track.
Oh, that's the entire fleet at Greyhound.
There you go. And then, the other side of the issue is the idea of, we have 66,000, is that the right number? Splitting hairs at this point, a number of individuals who are unhoused or are homeless in Los Angeles, countywide. And, if you want to break it down to under, Mayor Bass's inside safe, I think that drops down to closer to 40,000. I mean, it's just an astronomical number, no matter city, county, whatever it is. And so there's those constituents that say, we have this whole issue. We have to house these people, so there's that.
We're speaking with Marla Tellez, who you could watch weeknights at 6 on Fox 11 News. You can follow on Twitter at Marla Tellez. Marla, you look at the big national publications, and they're all warning there's a new COVID variant on the way.
I know.
Be afraid. Be very afraid. Some universities, some jurisdictions are already reverting back to the mask mandates. They say it's just 2 weeks, so wear it for 14 days. That's all, and then we'll go back to normal. Oh, yes. Well, and we all know that if other jurisdictions are moving back to the mask mandates, you know who is paying attention to all of that. You have covered Barbara Ferrer since the very beginning of this pandemic. Frequently, you were the only reporter in the room when she would be having her press briefings. You've asked her questions. You've interacted with her and her staff. Have you received any notification that they are entertaining the idea of bringing back the mask mandates? And do you believe this could be something that's on the horizon?
Anything's possible, John. I really, really, really want to temper this, and I really want to put all of this into context, just because we have a weekly medical segment that we do with an emergency room doctor, of course, board certified. I didn't even need to say that, but yes, we have somebody who's on our air who we have talked about the quote. He has called it a surge, and I've pushed back and said, a surge? I mean, we're talking about an average of 300 cases. Again, LA County is 10 million people. So calling it a surge, I have a hard time with. And I understand that COVID is in the community. I never downplay that. I understand that cases are up. I fully appreciate that. The other element to this is hospitalizations. That's the big concern. Will hospitalizations rise? And there's headlines that say, to your point, that hospitalizations are up 40, 50% in the last month. Well, guess what? In LA County, there's 300 as of the last update, because they only give weekly updates. Tomorrow we'll get new numbers. But as of last week, there was only 300 plus people hospitalized with and for COVID. There is a difference. And I say only because at the height of the pandemic, there was more than 8,000 people hospitalized. So when we look at the 50% jump, it's still so extremely low. Yes, there are some institutions, colleges. There is a local company like Lionsgate, for instance, that has now put a mask mandate in place. But if you read the fine print, and I haven't called Lionsgate, but everything I've read, there was a workplace outbreak. in which the county health department says if you have an outbreak within your company, please reinstate masks. But even Lionsgate, their mask mandate is targeted, meaning if you work on said floor where outbreak is, then please wear a mask, as opposed to the entire building. So there are these varied mask mandates that are popping up. Do I think that Barbara Ferrer tomorrow in her weekly update is going to say, we're reconsidering a mask mandate? I would be stunned if that's the case. Absolutely stunned, because we are in a different point. Just because this new variant is there, it's active, it's now becoming dominant, but it's still producing less severe disease than its predecessor in Delta, and that's what we care about. It's more in line with the flu and or a cold. The other thing to keep in mind is it was just a couple of weeks ago, and this last month, LA County Public Health has eased restrictions, right? So they lifted the vaccine mandate for LA County health workers probably 3 weeks ago. It was then 2 weeks ago that they lifted the mask mandate for LA County workers. So and that was a surprise to me, given that, we're seeing, quote, the numbers on the rise. I didn't expect that to happen with the mask mandate to be lifted for LA County health workers at a time when we're seeing rising numbers. That seems to go against one against the other. So my bottom line answer is I would be stunned if tomorrow we get an update that we're rethinking the mask mandate. I mean, John, can you imagine I'm already seeing online, we need to push back. We need to, that whole thing. Can you imagine the public reaction to that?
Oh, it would be overwhelming. And part of the reason that not part of the reason, the only reason that she backed down the last time is that she didn't have 3 votes on the Board of Supervisors supporting her. Catherine Barger and Janice Hahn have clearly moved on long ago from these mandates, and she lost Hilda Solis at the 11th hour last time around. So unless and until one of those 3 supervisors comes out and publicly says they're for mask mandates, I don't see the fake doctor moving towards a mask mandate at all, because why bring it to a board that is just going to vote against you? The political will just doesn't exist anymore for her.
And let's go back in time 1 year. I was looking at the calendar. Today's August the 23rd. It was August 21st of last year that the public comments went away on their social media accounts. So it's just been 1 year since that happened, and that sort of came out of that followed the uproar of we may be reinstating the mask mandate in the end of July, and it was soon after that the public comments were shut off. And now that brings us to the lawsuit that was filed by Julie Hamill on behalf of the parents in that federation that has formed out of this, and that will expected to go to trial in October, given that instance of limiting or not allowing public comments.
Well, and now there's a huge fight that's going on because people who live by the beach are furious that the LA County Department of Public Health is not posting publicly that those beaches are too dangerous to go in right now. Because we've had all of this rain, a ton of rain dumped on us all at once, you had a lot of bacteria, you had a lot of syringes, you have a lot of items that you don't want in our oceans that have been washed into our oceans. And if you go in the water, as people do during the summer here in Los Angeles, you're going to get sick. But the department is not posting signs telling people to stay out of the water, and people are trying to contact them and tweet them on social media, but it's only one way of communication. So you either call them privately, or I guess you tag them and hope that they message you privately, but you can't tweet them or message them on Facebook publicly.
Yeah, and I get no indication, by the way, that they would change that they're going to allow public commenting again. I will say, though, on their feed, because it's not necessarily, it's not dominated by COVID as it once was, but they have been putting out the the warning about do not go in the water, 72 hours after a major storm. So they do that on their Twitter, or their social media accounts, generally speaking. But you're right. You can't in a public forum go back and forth with them. And you haven't been able to for 1 year and 2 days.
Last question before you go. We've seen a bunch of different smash and grabs going on here in Los Angeles. We saw one at the Americana in Glendale. We saw another one in the San Fernando Valley. We certainly saw one in East L.A. at the Nike store, in other parts of town, Santa Anita as well. And we've seen some pushback from local officials at us, those of us in the news media that have covered these crimes. They believe that we should not be showing the videos on the news, that we should not be talking about them, that we are sensationalizing them for our own benefit. In fact, let's listen to Assemblywoman and candidate for Congress Laura Friedman on this topic.
We also need to stop scaring the heck out of people. We've got people in this country that drive around with guns and walk around with guns because they've been told that there are people that are going to kill them every step of the way. Mm-hmm. We have a media that stokes the fear people have against each other and against their neighbors, and we need to hold them more accountable for stoking that kind of fear.
What do you make of that? They want to, quote unquote, hold us accountable for showing these videos.
Last check, John, if I'm not mistaken, it is our job to inform. It is our job to let you know what's going on, especially as a local news operation, which I work for. It is our job to say, hey, this is what's happening in your neighborhood. This is what is the day's news. You should be aware of this for your public safety, right? And so I think that that's absurd, especially given that so many of these smash and grabs, just how organized they are, how many people are involved, and they're happening at major shopping centers. Can you imagine if we didn't put this on the news? It doesn't make any sense to me, given that soundbite you just played it's nonsensical to me, because we are in the business of informing and letting people. You can make the decision for yourself whether do you feel safe or not. We're not telling you one way to feel, but we're showing you what is happening. And hey, by the way, there was this smash and grab at the mall that you go to. So take that information and do what you will with it. Right? That's where I stand.
Marla Tellez, we'll all be watching you tonight on Special Report at 6 o'clock on Fox 11. Or I guess tonight maybe you guys are covering the debate. I don't know.
Well, that's the funny thing is we didn't get to talk anything about that because we had Larry Elder on last night. I know you talked you talked extensively about him already during today's show. But yes, we are we're like Tucker. We are counter programming with Fox 11 News at 6 o'clock. So there you have it. It's going to be interesting to see. And, I know you predicted that Elder is going to be on that stage. As I asked him last night, Larry, what if you're not on the stage? He says, Marla, my plan B is to make plan A work. And then he quoted Yoda and said, there is no try, there is only do. So his confidence, and just for entertainment purposes, it would be good to see him on the stage. And especially because if Doug Burgum is not going to make it because of his torn Achilles, let Larry go on the stage.
All right. Marla Tellez, Fox 11. You can follow her on Twitter at Marla Tellez. Marla Tellez, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks, John.